Hello, I hope you're doing well. My name is Jacqueline Vino from Galasso Learning Solutions, and welcome to the Genuine Learning blog. Today we are going to cover my absolutely favorite type of blog, which means that there is some sort of report that has recently come out. I absolutely love to cover different reports, whether it's from the ACFE or standard setters like the AICPA, the FASB, or some other type of entity. Anytime I get to cover a report, usually it's a pretty good day for me. So what report are we specifically going to cover here? So as you can see on your screen, it is the 2023 to 2024 review of the Private Company Council. So just a little bit of background information on this report. It was actually released not by the PCC, but by the Financial Accounting Foundation, or the FAF. So the FAF is specifically reviewing the PCC to determine how effective it is. So really the hierarchy here, right? We have the FAF, and they are responsible for overseeing the FASB and the GASB. And then the Private Company Council is a advisory board that basically serves the FASB. And they basically advise the FASB on all things to do with private companies to make sure that they are considered in the FASB's standard setting process. So basically what we are just gonna do during this blog is review some of the key findings from this report, some of the recommendations that the FAF has, and also the process that the FAF went through to solicit feedback from stakeholders to actually create this report. So during this blog, we have a lot of different information that we're going to cover. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So as you can see, this report was officially released by the FAF in December 2024. However, this report takes really a long time to create, as you can imagine. So the FAF started actively working on this in early 2023 when they started planning, and they've just been actively working on it for 2 years straight. So just to also mention, the last effectiveness review that the FAF conducted on the PCC was actually back in 2015. So it was definitely time for them to go back in, take a look at this again, and try to recommend some additional information for the PCC. So why are we here? Why is this report so important? Well, the PCC has a very important mission. While there are obviously several thousand publicly traded companies in the United States, there are millions upon millions of private entities, and they come in all different shapes, sizes, structures, industries, and the PCC is just primarily responsible for advising the FASB to make sure that these private entities that are, again, so diverse, coming from all different types of industries, that they are all being considered when the FASB is writing different accounting standards updates, because it's going to impact these millions upon millions of private companies. So again, very important that they are operating effectively. So how did the FAF go about conducting their review of the Private Company Council? So I am just personally a very visual person. I really appreciate little graphics like this, and this is something that came directly from the report itself. So you can just kind of see their process and their timeline here. They started out collecting data back in September of 2023, and they started internally, right? That's usually the easiest way to get feedback from people. They talked to people that are currently on the PCC, people that used to be on the PCC, different FASB staff and liaisons, and they just asked them an open-ended survey. Then the next step in the process was conducting virtual meetings with people outside of the FASB. So they talked to different CPA firms that are serving private companies as their clients. They talked to banking industry lenders who are lending money to these private organizations, and other types of external stakeholders. So after doing the survey, they went ahead and they did some virtual calls and meetings. And then after that, they basically released a request for public comment. So anybody was able to respond and provide their feedback. So they had a pretty, diverse data collection process. Outside of just those internal surveys, they were also seeking a lot of external feedback, which I think is really important for this process. So if you actually go and download this report, it is broken out into 5 distinct categories. So on the next couple of slides, what we are going to do is break down what the stakeholder feedback was for each of these categories, what the conclusion was for the categories, and also any further recommendations coming from the FAF. So the first category that we have is the mission, remit, and structure of the Private Company Council. So as I mentioned earlier, the PCC's mission is to advise the FASB on different accounting issues that are specific to private organizations. But they also have another mission as well, and it's to really determine if there are any, exceptions or modifications that need to be made to existing GAAP, and that are required to address the needs of the users of the financial statements for private organizations. And I will say that in this category, overall, there was some pretty strong stakeholder feedback. People really thought that the PCC was succeeding in its mission. Now, what I will always say is you can't please everyone. There were some people that thought that there was maybe some room for improvement with requesting different alternatives to GAP that private organizations can take advantage of. But overall, a lot of people really did praise the PCC for different alternatives, such as, categories like goodwill and intangibles, hedge accounting. There was a lot of specific instances that stakeholders cited in their feedback. Now, on the other hand, with communication, outreach, and engagement, things were a little bit dicier on this category. So while they felt that they were functioning pretty strongly with their overall mission and carrying out their overall objectives and goals, stakeholders really did believe that they could do better when it came to communicating with stakeholders. Stakeholders indicated that they wanted some more information from the PCC. They wanted enhanced communication. They did feel that there was a slight information gap between the PCC and the stakeholders that they are trying to serve. So they wanted to really increase awareness, education. So what did the FAF recommend to respond to some of this feedback? Supporting the new agenda prioritization process, creation of the PCC annual report. This is going to serve as a key communication tool for PCC stakeholders, and also enhancing the website as well, just to make it a little bit more user-friendly so people know where to find different information on the PCC. Now, when it comes to meeting operations and culture, much like with the mission, this one had pretty positive feedback as well. So this has to do with how often the PCC meets. And just for those of you that don't know, they meet 4 times a year. And they can also have additional meetings depending on if the PCC chair thinks it's necessary. They also talked about the format of meetings, the structure of the meetings, working groups, the culture and overall vibe of meetings at the PCC. And overall, they did think that the PCC was doing a pretty good job. So usually if you guys have ever, watched their meetings or participated, it's a pretty inviting environment where people come prepared. They talk about the agenda ahead of time. Everybody shares their own unique feedback, and it's just also a very safe environment. So people did believe that this was good, and the FAF just recommended that the PCC keep on going with this, right? Continue on with the existing culture and, already doing a great job in this area. Now, what about the size, composition, and recruitment? Now, this one, much like with communications and outreach, kind of had some, differing feedback from stakeholders as well. So this is one where there was lots of different items. A lot of concern was actually expressed over the composition of the private company council. So since private companies, as we all know, are incredibly diverse, and there are millions upon millions in the United States, stakeholders want to ensure that the PCC, which only has 9 to 12 members at any given time, including the chair, is as representative as possible. And as you can imagine, that's very, very hard to do with only 9 to 12 people. So the conclusion was that the PCC will continue to evaluate its composition to maintain that credibility and that trust from stakeholders. And with regards to recruitment, they also recommended to have an evergreen call when it comes to applying for the PCC, just to make it a little bit easier. These are basically just year-round submissions to make the process go a little bit more smoothly. However, I also do want to point out that PCC members still need to be appointed by FAF. That is still not going to change. So you can still go ahead and submit your nominations, but that doesn't obviously guarantee that you're going to end up on the private company council. So just some concluding thoughts and future reviews. Overall, I do think that it was a fairly positive report. A lot of people sent some positive feedback, but there's also some, actionable items that were recommended as well when it comes to communication with a new PCC annual report and some revisions to the website. And additionally, some changes to recruitment, right? So having that evergreen call for recruitment and for the PCC to continue to monitor who is actually on that board, right? So to make sure that it's well composed, it's representative, it's diverse, representing all different types of industries. Now, another thing that I want to point out is that going forward, the FASB is actually going to be responsible for reviewing the PCC. So this whole report was done by the FAF, as I previously mentioned, and they said from now on, the FASB is going to go ahead and do all of these future reviews, and of course, having FAF oversight. But as you can tell, that's pretty much it. That's all we have for today. So thank you so much for tuning in. Once again, my name is Jacqueline Vino from Galasso Learning Solutions, and I hope to see you again on a future blog. Thank you so much and have a great day.